Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar event, Exploring Cloud Computing and the Eduverse. I'm very excited about today because this session will explore how schools can leverage cloud-enabled computing solutions, not only today, but also for tomorrow. And we're also going to explore the growth of the Eduverse and what's going to be happening there and what might come about. If you have any questions, please feel free to submit them whenever you want. You can just tweet them with the hashtag Asus Education. Let me start off by introducing myself. I'm Brian David Johnson. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm a futurist, an author, and a professor at Arizona State University. And for today's conversation, I think it's important to call out that I'm an applied futurist. So I work with people to not only think about possible futures, but what are the steps that we need to take today, tomorrow, 5 years from now to move towards these possible futures? And that's why I'm so excited to have the panelists that we have today, because they are both great thinkers, but also great practitioners who are thinking about how we can explore cloud computing and the Eduverse and what it means for educators. So I'm going to go around my panelists really quickly and have them just give us a quick overview of who they are. And Cheatham, we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Cheatham Ertem. I'm the Global Director for Public Sector and Education Sales at Intel. In my day-to-day job, I work with our country teams, partners, and ecosystem with strategies and tools to support our customers to make correct technology decisions. Education is my passion, and I developed an initiative called Skills for Innovation with my team to help educators to transform their education systems and prepare students for their future.
Thank you for that, Cheatham. Thank you so much for joining us today. Stephen, how about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Fang, and I lead the K-12 Google Cloud team. Over the past decade at Google, I've focused on partnering with school districts to migrate to the cloud and adopt cloud technologies such as Workspace EDU, Chromebooks, and now Google Cloud Platform.
So happy to have you with us today, Stephen. Chris, how about yourself? Could you give a quick intro, please?
Hi there, I'm Chris Whiteman, the Education Sales Director at Asus UK. My role is to enable the education team to make it as easy as possible for schools, colleges and universities to buy and successfully deploy Asus products. I'm privileged to host some fantastic journeys of schools and colleges as the words transform the learning journeys for students. And the more of these are witnessed, the more it inspires me to share all of these solutions with more education establishments.
Thank you for that, Chris. And then finally, our provocateur, Graham. Could you give a quick introduction?
Hello, I'm Graham Brown-Martin, author, broadcaster, and I guess, yes, provocateur on the subjects of the future of learning, work, and society. I'm also the founder of Learning Without Frontiers, a global community focused on the future of learning, sharing provocative and challenging ideas.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Graham. Okay, let's dive right in. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, our subject today is exploring cloud computing and the Eduverse. So I'm always really, I always think it's important to define it. So let's first, if we're going to be talking about what is cloud computing and why is it important to education, first let's define, when we say cloud computing, maybe people aren't familiar with it. So Stephen, could you just give us an overview and describe cloud computing for us?
Sure. Cloud computing really is just access to on-demand IT resources provided through somebody else's data center. So traditionally, you would access these resources through maybe your local computer or your own data center or server in your building somewhere. But now these resources can be provided at massive scale through the data centers all around the world. So some of these things you might be familiar with, like basic virtual machines or storage. But cloud computing also gives you access to really advanced resources like AI, big data analytics, or access to magnitudes of larger amounts of computing power or data storage. I think oftentimes we hear the term cloud computing and we feel like it's this nebulous concept, but the reality is we use cloud computing every day. Pretty much every service, every company you interact with is using cloud computing in one way or another.
Thanks for that, Stephen. So that's an explanation of what cloud computing is. Now let's think about it in schools. So Chris, could you walk us through the main benefits of cloud computing in schools, and what is the benefit for students, for teachers, for CTOs, and IT administrators?
Yes, cloud-based technology are becoming increasingly essential in students' routines, both inside and outside the classrooms. Thanks to cloud computing, teachers and students are able to better interact and get connected. They can manage information in a faster and more dynamic way. If we dig a little deeper into the benefits, standout benefit is accessibility. Content is accessible from anywhere at any time, and this means that the learning possibilities are endless. Students can start working on something at school and continue at home, all whilst teachers monitor the progress live. Gone are the days of collecting the workbooks at the end of the week. For marking, this can be done live for much faster feedback, and teachers tell us it reduces the amount of time spent on admin. Schools can also keep parents and guardians better informed. Hybrid learning is something that we all know about now, and cloud computing has helped to improve its effectiveness in schools that have implemented it. Remote learning is not going to be going away. Schools will be forced to close again, hopefully not for COVID, but there will be issues due to snow days or heating issues. Now, learning will be able to continue remotely. And modern working means a need for modern learning environments. Collaboration and group projects is a huge part of modern working, and it's important that we ensure students are work ready. Collaboration can be global and so much fun for students, talking to people on the other side of the world. Cloud computing can also help with long-term cost savings. It can reduce data storage costs, and students do not need high-spec technology. We can provide Chrome or Windows devices at a low cost, enabling a higher device per student ratio. In my personal opinion, the biggest benefit for schools comes when cloud learning is coupled with a one-to-one device, so enabling schools to level the playing field. If all pupils have access to the same resources, even outside school, it is no longer the haves and have-nots, which is vital if we're all to have the same chance in life.
Thank you for that, Chris. Now, Cheatham, I'd like to bring you in this. So Chris mentioned that there's a need for modern learning environments, again, to prepare students for the workplace of the future. Now, I know that you're passionate about skill building and to prepare students for the fourth industrial revolution. How does this integration of cloud computing better prepare students as the workforce for the future?
Thank you for this question. Yes, I'm really passionate about building the right skills during K-12 education in order to prepare students for their future success. And I'm not only talking about coding or directly IT-related skills, which are mostly elective courses. I'm talking about the core curriculum, and I think we need to build computational thinking, design thinking, social and emotional mindsets, and simulation data analysis type of skills into the core classes, such as language arts, social sciences, math, or science. And this will help students internalize these skills with an interdisciplinary approach so that they can use them throughout their life and help them to be successful in the future workforce. That's why I think it's really important from that perspective. The increasing adoption of cloud computing in education is echoing the trend that is happening in the workplace. We believe that access to cloud with a capable PC, like in one-to-one computing, is a critical piece in creating richer learning experiences and opportunities by expanding access to information and also to the experts. So you can think of this as migrating workloads to the cloud through services, which simplifies the distribution and management of learning resources while streamlining access. Because it simplifies IT infrastructure, cloud computing can make it easier to provide the support to more devices across a wider area. And I think cloud computing also enables better analytics. Cloud-based information sources make it easier to bring all the data from different learning resources and systems to a data lake and analyze the kind of important data such as student performance data from any device or any location. This can provide insights for creating learning experiences better tailored for each student's needs.
Thank you, Cheatham. Very, very well said. So now, Graham, I want to bring you into this. I'm an author as well. I'm a word nerd. And so your book, Learning Reimagined, also explores this topic of what Cheatham was just talking about, preparing the workforce of the future and what do we need to do. Could you speak a little bit about what that means in context when it comes to cloud computing, preparing that workforce?
Yeah, I mean, I've been studying this for quite a while. I did, the book that I published through Bloomsbury, the World Innovation Center for Education, allowed me to look pretty much in 5 continents, 25 countries over a period of a year. So geopolitical study, if you will, of education systems and how digital technologies may or may not be impacting them. So it was a really interesting opportunity because it took me to so many different types of environments. Obviously, the countries for education that you would immediately think of, Singapore, Finland, and so on, but also some diverse, active conflict zones and crisis zones. The question I really wanted to ask was, given the changes that we're seeing across society and particularly fourth industrial revolution on its way, for example, in what way has digital technology impacted education? And the thing is that what surprised me on that journey was that the real innovation was happening on the fringes, rather than the sort of the mainstream education systems. Really, necessity was driving innovation in these areas because you're getting hard to reach learners and so forth. And for these kinds of things, actually, cloud computing are pretty much essential. I think as Stephen mentioned earlier, it's pervasive. We're using it all the time anyway. Now, of course, we could use these technologies to, if you will, reinforce old practices, the sort of industrialization, natural progression of the 20th century. And that's absolutely fine. I mean, the admin and all those sort of things through cloud computing, great. I can see the industrial efficiencies of that. But I think we're barely scratching the surface of what we can actually do with cloud computing when we start using it in a way to think about how do we reimagine our education systems fit for the 21st century, fit for the 22nd century, with the skills and knowledge so that they may thrive. And I think that's where cloud computing comes in. It's both the decentralization of everything and the centralization of everything to the individual. And that really makes me excited for the future because, by golly, we need to connect the community of learners together from wherever they are and from whatever background. Never has there been a time that we needed to do this more than today. And that's where I think cloud computing is heading.
I couldn't agree more, Graham. And that's one of the things I think is so important, as we think about, exploring cloud computing and the Eduverse, and we think about this back and forth between the kind of the present and the future, right? We need to imagine a future. We need to imagine a better future and what we can do with it. And imagination is one of the most underutilized tools that we're all using to kind of imagine it. But then as we move back and forth, Cheatham, I want to bring you back in because let's go back to that applied portion of it, right? We know that the rapid rollout of one-to-one mobile learning solutions has really put a strain on IT administrators. I mean, this is going on right now. This is going on today. How do you think cloud computing can help solve these challenges? What could it do for these folks?
Yeah, so moving to the cloud is a very effective way to scale capabilities. Think of technology as a service without having to scale staffing. In a complex environment, the number and types of the devices, as well as the specific resources needed, are constantly changing because there are changes in the student demand, the student population, staff size, and if the school is on or off, it's different. Cloud deployment makes device management and adapting to these changes much simpler. Also reaching out to the different resources, learning resources. But here, I want to emphasize one thing. In addition to adopting cloud computing, I want to emphasize the importance of ensuring the right device. Educators and students need to have the right device, which is a performant PC that can deliver the computing power needed for richer usage models, with manageability and security built into the platform. This will create the user experience that educators and students are looking for, while decreasing the strain on the IT staff.
Those are really good points, Cheatham. I think that really does start to show kind of what can happen. Chris, I think you could have a really interesting perspective on this as well.
If I could also add that whilst IT administrators have seen workload increase, cloud-based tools have helped to simplify the setup and ongoing management of devices, saving time and costs for IT operations, maintenance and troubleshooting. ASUS cloud-based devices can be set up ready to go straight out of the box, with zero-touch enrollment for Chromebooks and autopilot for Windows laptops. Cloud-based devices can be managed and controlled remotely to ensure consistent, and responsible use that aligns with IT policies. An excellent example of this can be seen in one of our case studies, where they control the Asus Chromebooks remotely to monitor the usage, even when students are at home. We'll put a link for this case study in the chat, where if you search Little London Asus, you'll find it quickly. The other benefit for cloud computing is that hardware issues do not need to cause downtime. With cloud computing, you just simply log on via a different device, giving time for IT administrators to resolve any hardware issues.
Thank you for that, Chris. And this is one of the reasons why I sort of love all the panelists here, from Cheatham to Chris, that these are actual solutions that are out there. So thank you so much for that case study. Now, Stephen, I'd like to bring you in. So what are some of the challenges that you see schools are facing right now that these cloud-based solutions could help with?
Sure. There are a lot of challenges that schools are facing that cloud solutions can help with. A lot of districts I've spoken to this past year had a lot of trouble providing the right technical resources to their students, especially given so many students were doing virtual learning. So desktop as a service was instrumental in fulfilling the vision that we're all talking about of students learning from any device, any place, anytime. Other districts needed help communicating with parents, so they used cloud-based translation services. I've also worked with districts in deploying solutions with Google Maps so that parents have real-time access to where their child is on the bus route. Other districts wanted more information on how their students were doing in class and finding the right resources to help their students learn, so they worked with Google to build analytic solutions. I think the takeaway is that there are a lot of challenges, but cloud really is a tool that can help with a wide variety of these challenges schools are facing. And we can be creative and working together to build these solutions.
Yeah, and it is all about those solutions and looking at that intersection between these cloud computing systems and what it can do with education. So those are three really great examples of sort of where those things can come together and what's happening today. But Graham, I want to bring you in. I want to go a little bit further out. I want to start thinking about, again, let's go back and start thinking about the future. You know, cloud computing, it's not new. It was invented and talked about in the 1960s. And for the longest time, for years, schools have been exploring cloud eventually, that it was going to come, but they were kind of reticent to kind of go and do it. But now, due to the pandemic, educators are exploring cloud now. All of a sudden, it went from, oh, it's just coming, to we have to have it today to solve a lot of these solutions, which is exactly what the other three panelists were talking about. But now I'd like to talk about what's cloud next. You know, how can educators and administrators prepare for not only leveraging cloud today, but also, again, using that imagination, start thinking about how can they use some of these solutions, these cloud-based solutions in the future?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think one that everyone's asking. I mean, and there's not only one answer. I mean, you know, we think about cloud now and the implementation of accelerating, you know, traditional standardized practices, administration, those kinds of things, content distribution, and so on. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just brings us a digital version of where we were. Cloud next is when we start looking at new forms of learning and leaning on, for example, what we've learned in the social media sphere in terms of connectivity and getting people to share things together of value, perhaps themselves or others. And even some of the gaming technologies, you know, we've seen emerge in the massively multi-user maker environments like Minecraft, for example. And if you're old enough to remember World of Warcraft, where, you know, people of all ages actually collaborated together, built strategies together, and effectively learnt together. I mean, it was a game, of course, and I'm not suggesting that we just gamify everything, but collaboration, assessment in real time, being known very rapidly for what you can do, not just what you can remember. You know, those two things that, you know, in the world of employment, for example, I must have employed over 1,000 software engineers in my career. You know, I didn't really look at certificates. What I looked at was, you know, what they could do. I mean, today I look at something like GitHub, for example, the holy grail of software engineers. But looking at that, I can see what skills that they have, what they can actually do. Sometimes that's more important for the employer and certainly for the future. So I think cloud computing, cloud next, is when we start exploring things that we can do that are transformative in this space, in surfacing what we can do. At the moment, we have a very narrow lens the sort of certification. It doesn't really tell you much about the person and what they can do. We can start surfacing the way that we can connect all these different aspects of somebody's life together and say, look, this is who I am, this is what I can do. I think it gets really exciting. I think when we start seeing co-learners, because everyone's a co-learner, even teachers are learners, lifelong learning. This could be a wonderful way of peer-to-peer sharing and learning in ways that we haven't even begun to imagine.
I think that's one of the things that is so important, Graham, and I love about your writing and work, that notion of sort of lifelong learning and understanding the whole human when it comes to education. And cloud computing allows that, as those examples showed, that there's all those different ways that we can look at how cloud computing intersects with education. But now I want to shift gears. So we went way out into the future, and then we've also talked about some specifics for today. Now I want to start thinking about the challenges and solutions around cloud computing, and also start talking about the Eduverse, right? The Eduverse being, as we think about the Metaverse, and people have been talking about it, the Eduverse, of course, is being able to apply the Metaverse to education. So I would like to do that shift in the gears, talk about sort of challenges and solutions related to cloud computing. And then also we'll talk a little bit about the Eduverse, because that's really fun. But let's actually get down to brass tacks first. So we start thinking about applying some of these solutions. Let's think about the challenges. And so, Stephen, I want to bring you in and ask you, so what are some of the concerns or challenges that schools will need to address to transition to cloud computing? Okay, let's say, they see, here's some benefit. So what should they keep in mind? What do you believe is the largest barrier to entry when it comes to cloud computing?
Yeah, there are two challenges that come to mind that schools are going to need to address as they make the move or adoption to cloud. I think the first is cybersecurity. Schools have a lot of sensitive data and are constantly being attacked by ransomware, phishing, data breaches. Cloud can really help here by having data stored in much more secure environments, better audit trails, security innovations. All of these public cloud providers that you might work with have hundreds of people, teams really dedicated to security that are working on the front lines of preventing these attacks. The second challenge schools face, I think, is going to be change management. Cloud is a different way of doing things that will require time, training, resources, and support. But I believe, and yes, I'm a little biased here, but I believe that the benefits are really going to outweigh the costs. In the time I've been at Google, we've already seen this change from email being on-prem, being managed by one person, to now most districts use Workspace for education and they use Gmail, or devices were really difficult to manage. You had lots of different devices that needed to be patched one by one. And now Chromebooks are the most used device in education, where the admin console can take care of all that for you. And I really think cloud is going to be the next big technological change we see when it comes to education.
And certainly, Stephen, when it comes to education costs, it's always about costs, right? That being able to manage those. But I'm glad you mentioned security, because I want to pull on that a little bit more. As I mentioned, it's at the top. I am a futurist who does threat casting. I look at possible threats. I do a lot of work in security. And Cheatham, I want to bring you in, because I think one of the most common concerns that organizations and organizations have about cloud is security. So how can schools protect themselves against security breaches when moving to a cloud-based system?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So security in a cloud-based environment benefits from most of the same measures that benefit an on-prem deployment. So on the physical side, adoption of a single sign-in model with multiple factor authentication can greatly improve security. And of course, it's important to train all the users to recognize cyber attacks through email, text, or even phone calls, like also Stephen mentioned. From the technology perspective, Intel builds multiple security capabilities into our data center processors. For example, integrated encryption acceleration, which helps keep data secure without sacrificing the performance. And all of the top cloud providers host a rich variety of Intel-based instances, making Intel security features readily available to our cloud customers.
So those are the challenges, right? So I think it's important, thank you for that, Cheatham, to talk about the challenges, to say, okay, let's keep these things in mind. It's all not roses. So, but let's think about those challenges. But now I want to shift over to solutions. And I want to bring it to you, Chris. So we've talked about this. Let's bring in solutions. And you even mentioned some things that you've been working on. Could you share what products and services ASUS offers to help educators and school administrators to adopt cloud computing, to be able to bring it into their organizations?
ASUS has developed a wide range of education devices to help educators make the most of cloud computing. When paired together with Google Workspace for Education or Microsoft Teams or third-party apps, these devices truly digitalize the classroom, helping students to have better learning outcomes. We offer Windows laptops, Chromebooks, desktops, all-in-ones, Chromebox, through to 6-node, high-density servers for hybrid cloud, which can help reduce costs, improve continuity, and improve security. The ASUS range of education devices are designed in line with the ASUS education DNA. This means they're designed for K-12 students with student-centric features such as educational toughness, easy service, and modular design. As we know that accidents do happen. Because of this, we make spare parts available for sale. This reduces the cost and makes it far more environmentally friendly. For cloud computing, connection to the internet is key. So we have Wi-Fi 6 and LTE on some of our models, meaning cloud learning really can take place anywhere. In addition to designing and manufacturing the devices, ASUS aims to make it as simple for the schools to purchase. And much of this comes from the way that we help schools. We can offer helpful advice and guidance as we share our learnings from other deployments. We believe in letting end users touch and test the devices before purchasing, so offer demo devices, which can be arranged by your reseller, MSP, or ASUS directly. We provide the cloud infrastructure platforms. ASUS hybrid cloud solutions deliver unprecedented performance, high availability and scalability for cloud capturing. Schools can gain agility, replicate and protect on-premise workloads, and see reduced data storage costs. With the ASUS hybrid cloud approach, you can tap into the advantages of both public cloud and private cloud simultaneously and move to the cloud incrementally at your own pace. We hope that you'll be able to join us at the BEC show in London. It's a 3-day event that will start on Wednesday, 23rd of March, and will enable you to get hands-on with a full ASUS range.
So some really great examples of solutions from ASUS, Chris. That's really great. Hey, Stephen, let's hop over to you. So how is your team at Google Cloud helping schools adopt some of these cloud-based computing solutions?
Yeah, we understand that adopting cloud can be daunting. And as we mentioned before, there are a lot of solutions depending on the use case, depending on the challenge. But hopefully the takeaway is we're really here to help for districts that are interested in dipping their toes in the water. I'd start with some of the free online training we have available, and also just reach out directly to someone at Google or one of our partners to start the conversation. Depending on the use case, we have free cloud migration assessments such as StrataZone. We have free credits, free trials of other cloud-based solutions to provide. I really do think that the main impetus is to get started, and we're here to walk with you every step of the way.
So some other great examples of solutions. And so again, I'm so happy with my fellow panelists, the people who are actually going and implementing this. Cheatham, I'd like to bring it over to you and talk about some of those solutions as well. Could you speak a bit about how Intel is supporting schools when they're interested in cloud computing?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. First of all, I want to start by saying cloud adoption is not just one event. It's a journey. So school district will start from somewhere and then continue their pace of adoption according to their needs. And there are different, for example, they can start with different as-a-service models. Software as a service, platform as a service. We call it EdTech as a service, including the device as a service. And also there are ways to optimize adoption of cloud, from on-prem deployment to more of a CSP-hosted model or a hybrid approach, which is mostly adopted these days. So for many, the first step is adoption of specific services that are available as cloud-based solutions. Intel's Unite collaboration and displays solution is one of them. And being the leader in data center platforms, Intel has the best server platforms with performance and security features that our OEMs like ASUS can offer on on-prem deployments. And Intel also works with major CSPs, as I mentioned already, to provide the secure cloud instances that school districts will need.
So 3 great examples of different solutions for implementing it. So we talked about challenges, we've talked about solutions. Now I want to shift to that future. I want to start talking about the Eduverse and start thinking about, what does that mean? And again, obviously, as we think about the metaverse, as we think about, that intersection between the physical and the digital, as we bring that into education, so people, calling it the Eduverse, what cloud really empowers is for people to move beyond the walls of their school. Right now, granted, we're in a physical and a digital world, but the Eduverse really kind of expands that and creates a new space for teaching and learning. So Graham, I want to bring you in here because I know you've been thinking about this. What do you believe are the implications for education as we move into the metaverse? How might the shift to the metaverse impact how we learn?
Well, I think, looking at some of the other technologies which are being aggregated for the metaverse, I mean, if we're smart, it will have a follow-on impact. The ideas around immersion, the ideas about collaboration across great distances and connected with communities and so on. I think, the actual switch to perhaps a more three-dimensionally represented space is less of the issue as to what that means in terms of how we communicate and share, because teaching and learning, however you look at it, is relational. The room is different depending on who else is in the room or the relationship between each teacher and learner. When we were thinking about software as a service and so on, I was thinking about teaching as a service, which of course, it's always been, and teachers are in service, of course, of learners, but teachers are, as I mentioned earlier, also learners. The ability to move your, if you like, portfolio between different systems, not being locked in, I think will be a major breakthrough actually in cloud computing in the future. So that the amalgam of the things that I've done and things I've achieved will be moved smoothly. There's not that kind of jarring thing that we get perhaps on LMSs and so forth. It's at that point in history. So I think those are the areas that I'm most excited about. And then, of course, the opportunity to pick your own cohort, to learn with people from different parts of the world, to share things across distance and across cultures, I think is going to be the huge value of the future of cloud and the Eduverse.
And one of the things I always think is really important when we're thinking about the future is also kind of talking about a little bit about the past and kind of what is different. So Cheatham, I'd like to bring you back in. So online worlds have tried to appeal to educators in the past. We've actually talked about some of those collaboration spaces. What's different now? What is the strategy that companies will have to employ to be successful as we start thinking about the metaverse, as we start thinking about the Eduverse in this space?
Yeah, so to me, the promise of the metaverse is to create a sense of togetherness over a distance, and also to create more realistic and immersive simulated experiences to increase engagement. So as you know, one of the biggest problems of educators these days is student engagement. We know that when students are engaged, they can learn better and apply their learnings to be successful. And I believe Eduverse can help with that. So I want to explain one thing, a research that we did. A group of researchers at Intel conducted a study called Kids Space at School, where a group of first graders interacted with an animated peer learner named Oscar for a math lesson. Oscar was programmed with a face, pose, and gesture recognition, along with other sensing capabilities, which encouraged interaction between Oscar and the students. What we learned from that study has been fascinating, with students achieving 99% of engagement rate during the lessons and a positive emotional response of 95% of the time. So it's really very promising. And of course, this was a first grader example, but if you think of, not just math or science, but if you just imagine that we can create immersive simulations for teaching social science topics like history or literature, with the use of AR, VR technologies, and AI and machine learning, you can take students back to the history to interact with figures from the past, or with characters in a book or in a play. I believe this can skyrocket the learning outcomes. And also, what we have today, even before not going to very immersive AR, VR type of things, we have currently have esports. And I also see esport as a form of a starting of the Eduverse as well. Because esports provide an opportunity for students to experience a team environment while playing a virtual game. Today's esports leagues are mostly providing individual experiences to the students. But I believe we will soon see many schools create esports team and join sports leagues. This will offer students a safe and structured team environment in their school setting and compete like in a traditional physical team sport. So I think that's also another great opportunity. But if we go back to the question, so I see Eduverse creating so many opportunities for more immersive simulated environments, and of course Eduverse will require more performant devices, so that you can experience those seamless immersive experiences and interaction needed.
I completely agree. And so now what I want to do, because we're almost out of time, but I want to make sure, being a futurist, I want to make sure we get some time to actually talk about just the future in general, even broader. So I'm curious, what innovation do you believe we will have over the next 5 years or even over the next 20 years? That's one of the questions I want to ask. And Stephen, I want to start with you. Let's think big about the future. What do you see coming?
Yeah, I think over the next 5 years, analytics is going to have the greatest impact. And I actually think the future is hopefully going to look something like what Graham and Cheatham just described. On one hand, you're going to have analytics to better understand the students, who they are, what their motivations are, what careers or jobs they should pursue, what should they be doing in the future. And on the other hand, I think it's also going to be about how are we serving the best content to these students? Just like Cheatham was talking about, is it AR, VR? Is it through gaming? Is it through a specific video? Is it catered to their interest? And I think if we can do both of those well, not only will we know who the student is, we'll also be able to give them the best tools and curriculum to fulfill their goals. I hope we can see that within the next 5 years. Within the next 20 years, 20 years is a long time away, and I really don't think I can say. If I look at the past 20 years, there's no way I could have predicted all the innovations and advancements that have happened, how pervasive devices are, the rise of the internet, how fast speeds are, like all these things happened in the past 20 years. So I'm just excited to find out what's going to happen in the next 20.
I agree as well. So now, Cheatham, I want to come back to you. So when you're thinking 5 years out, what innovations do you see coming? What do you hope to see coming? And what do you see as you look out maybe that on the 20-year horizon as well?
Yeah, I agree with Stephen. It's difficult to predict 20 years out. It's going so fast. But first of all, in the next 5 years, we are already seeing, as I mentioned, to shift to more immersive models, more project-based learning, more flipped classroom type of technologies, so that to increase student engagement and help them really learn and internalize these subjects that they are learning. So I think we will see a lot of AI, and I think looking further ahead, I see AI will have the greatest impact in the form of analytics, as Stephen mentioned. That's one area, and this analytic can be kind of from higher end or applied into education in a bigger analytic matter, or in the device when you are just interacting with the device. But lots of AI, and to support student and facility management, and to help with the personalized education. We will see a lot of that, and then gamification and so on. So we will see all of these getting into the innovation, and we are also seeing seamless interaction between the devices. During the pandemic, it was, as you know, the biggest experiment. Suddenly we had to do without further many preparation maybe, but lots of technology is used. and we are not going to go back to the time before pandemic. So the technology is helping a lot from that perspective. But in the meantime, when technology is helping, of course, we need to modify the usage models as well. So I guess, for example, we will see a lot of seamless integration between the PC with the phone, different devices for teachers as well, some analytics tools and so on. We will see a lot of them. And I guess, again, it's not easy to say for next 20 years, but with the fourth industrial revolution, more edge and analytics coming into it, maybe we will see different type of classrooms as well in the future.
And finally, Graham, I want to bring you into this because I know you spent a lot of time thinking about the future and really kind of working on it. What advice would you give education professionals? So really pragmatic stuff, like what if people are starting to, they just want to get a better understanding of cloud computing, of the Eduverse, of other education technologies, where would you push them? Where would you say, okay, as you're starting to think about this and get a better understanding, what advice would you give them? Where would you point them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a horrible comparison, and I hope your listeners will forgive me. There is a sort of saying about bring a 17th century surgeon into an operating theatre in 2022. Would they be able to cope? I mean, absolutely not. And of course, the mean thing is to suggest that you could do that with a teacher or an educator and then know exactly what to do in the classroom. Now, I mean, I'm taking it with a pinch of salt, but my point is that to be an effective educator, teacher, learner, as we move into this, very exciting future, not being agile, not being aware, not being interested in what are rapidly becoming tools of the trade, I think isn't optional. And I think, it's a lot of this stuff you're using anyway. I mean, it's even outside of a traditional education environment, you're using it with your social media and variety of the apps that you use every day. You are learning from your devices. So I think it's just about getting in and understanding it and thinking about new ways that this can expand and amplify your practice.
And with that, everybody, we are out of time. I want to thank our incredible speakers for joining us today and providing both the vision for what's going on today and the explanations of what could happen in the future. I believe everybody here has a great passion, because the future of education, I can think of no more important subject than the future of education. And I'm sure all the viewers out there will have lots and lots of questions from my panelists today. So I really recommend that everybody follow our speakers on Twitter, follow them on LinkedIn, and also feel free to tweet your questions with the hashtag #ASUSEducation. And we'll be sure to get back as soon as we can to kind of come up with those. Because again, this is a conversation about the future, but it's also a conversation about today. And there's really pragmatic challenges and solutions that we need to get to. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We're excited to hear your thoughts. We're excited to help with any questions that you might have. And also, we're looking forward to continuing the conversation in the future. So thank you so much.